part.
So I want to introduce myself real quick before we get started. I'm Amanda Miyamoto. I'm the president of the Dripping Springs Council, ISD. We are kind of like the umbrella board for all our local PTAs. And part of our mission is to do advocacy, things like this, is hold a school board candidate forum. So Kelsey is my advocacy chair for the council this year. I want to set some kind of ground rules beyond what she set. If we could not clap, make comments during it, I want to be respectful to all the candidates and also the time that I've already kind of wasted trying to do a full live stream. So there will be time at the end, right, Kelsey?
Yeah, I had budgeted to stop maybe about 7:45, so those in attendance could ask individual questions if they want to of the candidates afterwards, and still get Mr. Schumann. Thank you, Mr. Schumann, and campus for hosting us tonight. So be respectful in that time, right at 8.
Right. So if you want to show support for your candidate, let's learn from the good part of the Oscars, and you can do, a visual, applause sign. So again, respect all the candidates, no comments, no chatter. I'm also going to ask that no one else be recording. The recording that I'm doing will be on the council's PTA page and website. Probably actually the website, because uploading a full hour-and-a-half video to Facebook is problematic at best. We have taken questions from both suggested questions from Texas PTA and the submitted questions that came in the last couple days. So it's kind of a mix of both. We probably do not have everyone's submitted questions, and we are sorry about that, but we try to stick to kind of what the mission of PTA is, and that is bringing every child, somebody help me with this, making every child's potential a reality by engaging the community and family and parents. So we kind of stuck with that base. We are a nonpartisan organization, we are a nonprofit, and so we just kind of want to stick with the mission of PTA in what we're doing tonight. So I'd like to welcome Olivia Barnard, Joanna Day, Thaddeus Fortenberry, and Trisha Quintero to our forum tonight. So we'll get started.
Quick question: if you're not going to allow recording, can you have at least 2 devices recording on your side, just in case technology fails, which it will?
I will work on a secondary solution as we're going through this, but this is a PTA council event, and I don't want to take anything that has been said here out of context, or sound bites for your own pages. I would prefer that this be our event and our information that goes out.
Both of your devices. I'm just saying, if that phone shuts off halfway through and you don't know it, the rest of it's gone.
Yes, we'll work on that.
Thank you.
Yeah, just a further, a little bit on the questions. We had about actually 50 community submitted questions, which was great. Some of the ones that showed up in here were ones that we saw more than once. They might not be worded exactly as submitted, but if I got 3 very similar questions, I tried to kind of wrap them into an amalgam of one question. So the first question, without further ado, and we can just start to my right and we'll move down the table because this one doesn't give anybody a specific advantage or anything. Why are you running for school board? Please speak to your qualifications and how those will be relevant and impactful to the function of the board. And you will have 2 minutes.
And you're starting with me?
Yes,
go
ahead.
My name is Trisha Quintero, and I am running for school board. I believe that I bring a lot of qualities to the district. I come from another neighboring large district, and we've conquered and they've conquered and figured out really good ways to help the community with growth and spending. I was the chair of the Hayes Facilities Bond and Oversight Committee. I helped build bonds and actually, I helped navigate the district, figure out the bond packages, and then also bring them to the board and then beyond. So I think that being that we have a lot of growth in our district coming soon, we definitely have bonds on the horizon. They are coming sooner rather than later. We need a high school, we need middle school capacity, we need an elementary school possibly soon. And we need to know what that looks like, and we need to make sure that the community and the taxpayers are able to be confident in the decisions that our board's making. So I do believe that I bring that to the board. I'm also a mother of 5 kids. I have 3 kids currently enrolled in Dripping Springs ISD, and they are my absolute life. And I want to make sure that their education is top-notch, as other parents do. And I know that I can help bring that to our community. Thank you.
Should get myself out.
So this started when my wife and I started researching the school district, because my daughter, who is now 5, is going to start kindergarten. And my wife, not being from the US, didn't know anything about the US school system and kept asking me a lot of questions about all of this. And the more I researched the Dripping Springs area, this was 2 years ago now, the more I wanted to become involved. I felt very strongly about the program, the challenges of the district, including the high growth area, and all of the resources that introduces as well. So I hope that, because I'm a technologist, I've been an engineer all of my career, and I've worked for very large companies, and now I'm working at a startup. I hope that me bringing to the board, what I will do is I am looking at things in a systematic way. I want to make sure that whatever decisions that we are making, that we are looking at all the data, and we are consistently making the decisions with all of us understanding why we are making those decisions. So basically a data-driven approach. I think that another thing, I have served on several boards, technical boards and otherwise, and a huge component of it is making sure that you gain consensus on the board. An individual board member can do really nothing, but making sure that each individual is able to gain consensus by talking, by negotiating, by just working through all that might entail. And I think that that experience will be valuable for the Dripping Springs board as well.
So first, I want to thank all of y'all for coming tonight. It's really great to see so much engagement in this forum and in this election. So thank you all for coming. I'm Joanna Day, and I'm running for re-election. It's not a secret that my first term did not go as I think anyone wanted it to, or as it expected. When I told my 99-year-old grandma that I was running for re-election, the first thing she said to me was, "Joanna, why are you doing that?" And she's not the only one who has asked me after my first term. Like many of you, I'm really ready to move on. I'm really ready to move on and focus on the challenges that our school district faces. Improving education, we are already offering a world-class education to our students, but we have some room for improvement in some areas. I want to help support, and I'm running also because I support and trust our teachers. And I really feel strongly that we need school board members who are in a governance position that respect what our teachers do as professionals in the classroom. I'm running because I believe that public education should be adequately funded. Our Texas Constitution gives us a right to a public education because our founders believed that it was needed to protect the rights and liberties of the individual. As a lawyer, I believe that strongly, and I believe strongly that public education and an educated electorate is necessary to a democracy like ours. I also believe that all students deserve a pathway to success. That's what I mean when I say I believe in the power and promise of a public education, is that really good public education give all students the ability to succeed if they choose to take advantage of it. I want to take a minute to tell you a little bit about myself because I think it informs why I'm a good school board member and why I would continue to be a good school board member. I'm a 5th generation Texan. I grew up in Houston. I attended public schools, and I'm a graduate of Lamar High School in Houston. I attended and graduated from Rice University and then went on to law school in Washington, D.C. I practiced public interest law, and that's when I began my professional commitment to public service. Are we at 2 minutes?
Yes.
So, thank you for coming.
Ready? Yes.
Hi, I'm Olivia Bernard. I am a mom, I am a resident, a business owner, and a taxpayer. I am running for our students, our taxpayers, our parents, our teachers, and our staff. Because for me, it is the time in my life for which to serve, because every child deserves the best, because my career experience brings great knowledgeable wealth to this role, and because I see areas to improve, and I am confident that I can bring positive change to those. We have some amazing things happening in the district. I love Dripping Springs and I love the schools. We also have some challenges. I agree the last 2 years are not what any of us expected, but it pulled the veil back on things that we can do better if we ever face similar circumstances again. I am running because I don't ever want to feel the way I felt on the 3rd week of March 2020 again. And that was, as a parent, as a resident, as a taxpayer, that choices were being taken away from me as a parent. I moved to DSISD specifically to leave Austin. When I was in Austin, I saw a system that was overtaxed. I saw elementary schools that were at 110, 120% capacity, with needs being undermet, with families not feeling heard and teachers frustrated and broken. I see things happening in this district that are not okay. Dripping was to me this beautiful Friday Night Lights small town. I saw the opportunity for my son to grow and thrive here, to get an amazing education and become the best student, friend, and child possible. He is my why, and I see him in every student in this district, and in every student in this district, I see him.
It's time, thank you. All right, here's our fancy tech. You get to pick the first.
Oh, no, my hand's too big.
Yeah.
Sorry, big hands. You want to read it?
I
Or you
shall
want me to read it.
Yes, thank you. All right. Okay, again, 2 minutes. In the development of a school district budget, what goals and objectives would guide your decision making? Please include some priorities such as reduction in class size or improved technology in the classroom as part of your response.
So one of the things that you often hear in these campaigns, and actually in a lot of discussions around school board, is reduce the amount of money that the taxpayers are paying. And that's great, except this is a complicated problem. It is a responsibility of the district to make sure that our next generation have opportunities to learn to think, to learn to develop, and to be ready for the workforce. So if you just cut things out, you just say, hey, I'm not gonna pay this much for taxes, then we're not fulfilling the responsibility. And in essence, this is hurting the community. It's actually hurting the country. We need to make sure that everybody has these opportunities to grow and develop. So when I look at the budget, the first thing that I do, any budget really, is I try to understand what the requirements are. What are we delivering on? And this is a number of students based on demographics that we are paying for, these studies of growth. And then we start trying to work backwards to see what facilities are needed, what services with staff are needed. And this is very complicated. One of the things that I've been concerned about is we are focusing considerably on facilities, but we are not looking at the increased level of diversity that is coming into this area. And we need to make sure that the staff reflects that we have programs that don't let anybody fall behind or not have opportunities for growth. So you learn the requirements, you look at the unnecessarily complicated source of our money, which I've been blown away by. If you haven't gone through the TASB presentation on our funding, you should, because it's remarkable. Look at this, and then you start constructing what your budget looks like and what the schedule looks like to deliver on all your requirements. It's a systematic way of looking at it.
So since I've been elected, one of my priorities has been, and one of the directions that I've worked to move the board in, is making sure that we're looking at the budget and seeing how it's aligned to our board goals for the district. I think it's really important. One of the governance functions of the board is to set goals and priorities for the district. This year our priorities have been improving third grade math and reading scores, long-range facilities planning and making sure that we're preparing adequately for growth. And I'm blanking on the last one. I spent 6 weeks in different, going through all of these, but I'll remember it. But we want to make sure that when we're talking about things like teacher recruitment and retention, when we're talking about things like improving student education and access to opportunities, that we're looking at the budget and we're aligning our budget with our priorities. And that is a lot harder than it sounds like, because 86% of our budget goes to payroll. And so when that large a percentage of our budget goes to paying our staff and paying in vital employees like teachers and bus drivers and cafeteria workers and administrators, there's not a lot of extra leeway to cut. As Thaddeus said, school finance is extraordinarily complicated, and the funding formulas that the state uses are hard to understand. I believe that we need to adequately fund our schools and to make sure that our teachers get raises and that we are focusing on recruitment and retention in our budgeting process. I also believe that we have to make sure that our budget reflects, that our budget builds enough money into the instructional portion of our budget that is aside from payroll, so that teachers get the support and resources they need in the classroom to do their jobs well. In addition, I mean, we have to start thinking, forward thinking. I'm getting my 2-minute warning. That's
I know everybody can go on and on about these.
When you go like this, is that 2 minutes, or are you giving us a?
Would you all like me to do maybe like a 30 seconds?
Yeah,
I want to
Like
sign.
10
Healthy, I just was making it.
Oh yeah, just hold
We'll just look
sign
at
to
you.
go.
How about I do,
5
how about I
seconds.
do 3
Yeah.
for 30 seconds and then 10 seconds and then stop?
Yeah,
So
that's
for
fine.
everyone, okay, sorry, so that way you can have a chance to wrap up. Sorry,
Is it me?
2 minutes, yes.
Okay, when it comes to budget, goals, and objectives, first of all, I think the highest priority in the immediate moment right now is staffing and retention, and we have some very real challenges. We've got national issues. Regionally, the numbers are a little bit higher than they are nationally. We have teachers leaving the industry. I think back to a young teacher and what her passion, his or her passion is, and why they got into education. And I compare that to what they've been put through for the last 2 years. I want teachers getting back to what they love doing and what they're great at doing, and that's gonna take people, it's gonna take resources. The money does come from taxpayers, and I need to learn more about the relationships and the funds that funnel up and down with the organizations that we're affiliated with. But when I look at a budget, I think that going elementary is the way to go. And I can tell you, speaking as a resident and speaking someone who has asked questions of the board that I didn't feel I got clear answers, we need a really simplistic approach. It is very complicated. I am looking at the funding structure, and it is. But we're in a fast growth area, student population up 10%, exit, I believe, is at about 30%. These are really, really challenging mathematical problems when it comes down to it. I think we have to look at pay with teachers, because we're living in a district that is becoming more and more unaffordable, and that's just a reality. I think that staffing and facilities are number one. Obviously, if we grow, we've got the additional facilities. I'm looking at the long range. I can tell you this thing forward and backwards, but one reason I'm here today is because so many members in this community asked me to be here. Teachers, parents, and I can tell you that most people in the community don't like having to navigate this information. They want it brought to them, and I want to be the conduit for the community.
Is that helpful?
Yeah.
Okay,
Thank you.
fantastic, great.
So lower taxes is something that I ran on last year, and I'm also running on it again this year. The average homeowner pays about $6,139, and that's just for school taxes. That doesn't include any of the extras. And I've actually reached out to the board on several occasions and asked them to do things like an efficiency audit. That makes sure that all the employees that we're paying to do certain positions are needed and necessary and useful. We're a very fast growth district, and we need to make sure that we have enough money to pay our teachers the biggest salaries that we can afford. And in order to do that, we need to make sure that our money is going to the right places. We've been through 5 superintendents. We've been through 2 CFOs, and those are the people that are looking at the budgets with the biggest eyes. So in order to know exactly what's in these budgets, I feel like a third-party efficiency audit is necessary. And with that, we can find waste, fraud, and abuse. And I'm not saying there's waste, fraud, and abuse. I'm just saying if there was, we could always find it. The taxpayers deserve to know exactly where our money is going, because we're going up on taxes every year. We have a bond coming up in very soon, and 2018 barely passed. So the community does not trust the district with their money. We need to make sure that our community does trust the district with our money.
Next question. If you'll put that for me. I know, sorry. Couldn't find my fishbowl.
You have big hands too.
I see.
All right. This may just be a continuation for some of what you all were talking about. DSISD is designated as a fast growth district, and with that growth comes the needs for additional facilities. How, as a board member, would you see working with the bond committee and community to ensure a successful bond for the much needed facilities to handle the growth of the district? So,
Can you repeat the question?
yes. So, specifically, how, as a board member, would you see working with the upcoming bond committee and community to ensure a successful bond for the much needed facilities to handle the growth of the district? Joanne, I'll invite you to start.
Sure. I remembered what our third goal was. It was ironically communication. Of course, that's the one I forgot. Okay, on to fast growth. So right now we're in long-range facilities planning process, and we're in one of the most important parts of that process, which is that we've taken the recommendations from the long-range planning committee, which is a special committee to the board, and those recommendations are going to the community for community feedback. And I really think that that is one of the most important parts of this whole process in terms of working with the community and finding out what the community has an appetite for in terms of a bond package and what priorities they want to expend tax dollars on. So I think that this type of outreach that we're doing this time around, which for those of you who can remember back to the 2018 bond, which I never want us to repeat that type of bond process again. I really feel like we did not honor the community and get community input during that process as a district, and it led to some, it led to a bond election that was pretty close. But this time around, I think that we're doing it right. Going out to the community and making sure that the community is going to support the recommendations of long-range facilities planning and going back to the drawing board if the community is not going to is a great way to get feedback and to engage the community in the process. The bond steering committee is a special committee to the board. My role as a board member, if I'm lucky enough to be reelected, is to attend those meetings and to watch them. It's not to try to influence that decision. They report to the board their recommendations, and at that point is when I get to weigh in with other board members about what the recommendations are and what we, and ultimately what bond issues we're gonna put before the voters. And that's all I'm gonna say.
I had 10 more seconds.
All right, I heard the beep too.
Okay. The way the question was asked was interesting for me because it says, how will you support a successful bond? And the reality is, until I understand the bond, I'm not going to. One thing that I learned from the current long-range facility planning committee is this. Our community, and this was evident by in our school board meetings this last year, there was a lot of confusion on how we're forming these committees and the process in which to select members from the community to partake. I am here as a member of this community, and I can tell you that there was no process in place in which to form these committees. There was was no record tracking of who applied, and there was a lot of parents at the meeting saying, hey, I've sent emails, I wanna be part of these committees, and not being responded to. So first and foremost, making sure that there is a written policy and procedure in place in which we're making the selections for those committees. Number two is that it's well-rounded professionally and in every other way. And then I think, I'm sure most of you have seen the recommendations. I think the recommendations that we have now, we understand that we are at a capacity where we're going to need the second high school, that we need to build middle schools to a capacity of 1,200 to 1,500, and that we need elementary school number 6. But before I will get behind the future money that we're gonna ask, I wanna understand the money that we currently have, what's going out, what's coming in. One question, I mean, all of the SERS, ESSERS dollars that we received for COVID, I wanna see where those numbers went. I am behind this district growing, and I think the taxpayers embrace smart growth if there is trust, transparency, and teamwork, and I will bring collaboration to that conversation and again, be a conduit to the community.
So I have been, I was the chair of the Facilities Bond and Oversight Committee for DSISD. It's a fast growth district just neighboring us. And I have watched our process over here, and I just feel like it's a little broken. When I moved over here, I requested to be on the Facilities Bond Oversight, or the Long Range Planning Facilities Committee. I've applied for it twice and haven't even gotten a "you're not good enough to be on our committee" email back. So I think I could bring a really positive conversation to this process. I agree, we absolutely, for the future needs, the right now needs, in 2025, the Long Range Planning Committee has, if you listen to their meetings, that's when the high school is gonna get built. And it's necessary. There's a lot of people in our community that don't necessarily want us to go to a 2 high school community, but when it's all said and done, if you'll watch those meetings, we're gonna be a 3 high school community. And we just need leaders on our board that are bringing bond packages to our community that are vetted by the community, for the community and for the kids, and perfect environments for teachers, because they are the ones that are actually having to basically live in these facilities, and we need to make sure that we're spending money well. That's it.
You ready? Wait, did I go?
No, you're good. I apologize.
It's just the previous question was so
I
similar.
know, it's so similar.
Well, and I'm gonna get lost in the round robin track since we're starting it this way, so y'all keep me honest, thank you, I
We'll just raise our
apologize.
hand.
Yes.
The first questionnaire.
So the first thing is that I've been going to the board meetings for nearly 2 years now, and I've taken special interest in the budget. And I have not seen, any evidence of fraud or any kinds of stealing of funds or anything like this. And I think that if you go through in detail and you take the time and effort to do that, you might see some jumbled things. I get it. There's been not, fantastic execution in certain areas. But every audit, every process, everything that you guys were talking about is going to actually increase the burden on the budget. You just don't magically have an audit happening. You actually have to pay for this to happen. So unless there's a very compelling reason for that, then that's a risk. So that's the first point. The second point is that long range facility thing that Olivia keeps flipping through was extremely disappointing to me. No offense to anyone on the committee, but there was only 2 recommendations that really came out of it. We all agreed that there's going to be a new high school, at least before going to the community. The middle school was completely undecided. It was bogged down in arguments. The location of the elementary school was bogged down in all these things. And the one that really bothered me was that it never included anything about bus logistics. Should you have another depot? Where do the buses run? How do I keep the kids' transport short and reduce traffic? So we got a lot of work to do on these things. And I think I'm out.
We've got about 15.
Oh, jeez. I just wasted all that. So my hope, again, is that I want to be very systematic about the way to look at these things. My number one complaint, and I always write about this, is communication and transparency. I'm 100% aligned with everybody who complains about this in our district. So.
And that is.
There we go. Wait, I think I got more than one.
Take your choice.
And then we'll have Olivia's off. Next question.
Just keep your hand up, Olivia.
Okay.
Wait, but you start this one, right?
No, you do.
No,
No,
oh,
you-
Patty.
They need a talking stick.
Probably. The pandemic forced learning into the remote space. Could some form of hybrid or remote instruction continue to exist for DSISD? If so, what shape can this take, and how does the district allocate resources for this purpose?
Could you read it one more time?
Absolutely. Okay. Could some form of hybrid or remote learning continue to exist for DSISD? If so, what shape can this take, and how does the district allocate resources for this purpose?
Thank you.
I think it's a very good question and one that came up a lot when we went back to campus. I think it really depends on the need. I think for general population, I would really have to see some compelling data that would make that make sense. But I certainly think that there's some families and some children that if they have specific needs, it's our job as a district to provide services so that that family is not missing out on the same educational opportunities that our in-school learners are. In terms of what that might look like, the simplest way that I can think of it, because it's not a question that I expected, if you have a percentage of the district, in other words, if you have 10 kids that really need that type of learning, that might be one teacher that you're now covering that salary in lieu of a person who is in the school district. So I don't know that it would have to be an additional cost if we were sharing technologies, etc. I know that one thing that was such a challenge as we were trying this hybrid, our teachers were so exhausted because they had students in front of them, they had all this new technology, they were Q&A, phone calls, emails with moms and dads at home. It was a huge, huge burden, and it was a challenge for a lot of them, and they were very vocal and very honest about it. So if a need exists, we need to find a way to fulfill the need of that family and that student for sure.
So we do have that program, and I'm sorry, I'm not well tuned on exactly what that is, but if you're a homebound student, you can absolutely get public education through DSISD, I believe. I just can't remember what exactly it's called. I'm sure Joanna can speak to that. As far as online learning, kind of like what we did during COVID, it's all going to depend on funding. You know, we get a lot of our funding from taxpayers. That's the M&O side, maintenance and operations. But the state gives us money too. And if the state isn't willing to buck up and give extra funds for online learning, then that's not a feasible program that we can bring. I would like to let you guys know that I'm not totally against going to advocate for our district at the legislature. I did notice online that we didn't have any legislative priorities, and I've asked what our legislative priorities were. And you know, you hear people complain about funding all the time, and you hear people complain about how things are working, but if our board or our district isn't going to go there and fight for us, then we're just gonna have to sit here and complain about it. So one of my goals is to possibly go to the legislature and speak on behalf of my constituents and know exactly what our wants are.
So in a perfect world, I would say that I would hope that we wouldn't have virtual learning. But in the reality of a complicated world is we need to have options. We need to make sure that nobody is unable to get the education that they need and deserve. I work remotely most of the time, and I know how difficult it is to establish body language interaction, how just even even to communicate fundamentally. When you're talking about somebody in kindergarten or somebody, you know, throughout the elementary school, well, throughout high school even, we've got this giant gap of students that have had very limited communication, socializing, learning, and this is a major problem. And it's going to take a lot of work. Whether we have virtual classrooms ongoing, we need to make sure that we're compensating not only for what happened in the last 2 years, but what might continue to be a requirement to have well-rounded students that not only can talk through a digital device, but actually can carry on a conversation with their peers. I get the award.
Someone else's?
So could a hybrid remote instruction exist in DSISD? Not unless the legislature decides to fund it. They considered it in 2021 and it was a bill that didn't pass. So there are public virtual academies that go through certain school districts, but there's not funding for just any ISD to start a virtual academy. What Tricia was talking about is if you have a medical condition that prevents you from coming to school, you have a right to homebound instruction through a federal law called the IDEA. And a teacher will come to your house at no cost to yourself for a certain period of hours per week to teach you. That meets the federal law requirement. We do have a program called the Graduation Alternative Program, which is we do get state funding for, that is a hybrid program. It is a program for students who aren't successful in traditional high school and are for some reason and are opting out. Perhaps the classroom experience is not just what they're looking for. We've had kids who are very accelerated and have gone through the Graduation Alternative Program because they want to go to college early. We have kids who work half days and need a more flexible program in order to work to help support their families. So I would be all for having a true hybrid model or a true what is called hybrid flexible model of education for certain people that could opt in if we could get the funding for it. Unfortunately, I don't know that that's something that the legislature is going to do. And I think what we all learned during the pandemic is that kids learn best in school and they learn best in person. So we really have to make sure that we're balancing how we know kids learn best with giving them the flexibility to do what they need to do, either for their families or because the school environment isn't what they need or for mental health or other reasons. But I'd be open to it if we could get the funding for it.
That was everybody, right? Okay, good.